Good morning, grinders. Welcome to DFS pregame show. Here on RotoGrinders, I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter, and joined as always on Mondays. It's Mondays with McCool, James McCool, co-author with me on the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. As you make your way in, give me those thummy thumbs in the chat. I see you guys in the YouTube chat. Joe Mack, Frederick Dude, Suki Singh, Quinn Williams. Good morning. Good morning. Not the greatest of mornings for me. Lost money yesterday, even though primarily because my cash lineup just like, yes, I'm on the train and it splits in double ups. And yeah, $25 double up is not supposed to pay $14. Like, That probably shouldn't happen, but when you're like towards the last place pay up spots and you're tied 86 ways, that's what's going to end up happening. Because I thought yesterday on both sites, the cash builds were kind of straightforward. I mean, there were some slight deviations. I think there were two main lineups on Draftkings, maybe three or four on FanDuel that were mostly 2v2s. But COVID has definitely this past week, James, kind of made that there were a lot of gimmies, right?
Yeah. I thought that this last slate there were at least like 5 players probably in cash that I mean, like the pricing was just so boofed on this slate. Antonio Brown at 4,900 was maybe the worst pricing that we've seen on a wide receiver in. I can't even remember the last wide receiver that was that badly priced. Justin Jackson at 4,200. I projected him a little bit lower than the industry, but he was still like in cash games, very obvious. Ronald Jones in cash games, very obvious. Cooper Kupp.
That's not obvious.
I think that was obvious.
I think you played 3 of 4 of these running backs: James Robinson, Justin Jackson, Ronald Jones, Alexander Madison.
Yeah.
Like now, if you went up from going up for Madison means you probably played Josh Palmer in your second wide receiver slot.
Yeah.
Right. So that's so whether or not Alexander Madison replaced Robinson or replaced Jones, that was okay.
I think that the way that we saw the slate and based on ownership, based on the way that I build, Ronald Jones was considerably better than James Robinson. The 3 running backs that I saw for cash were Justin Jackson, Ronald Jones, and Alexander Madison.
Well, that you would be against the trend because James Robinson in my high stakes double ups, 85% owned.
Yeah, he was really, really owned. I was surprised he was so owned.
I truthfully didn't want to play the Josh Palmer build. I was going to play a build with actually Tyreek Hill. That would have been a disaster.
But I get it. I understand why you would have.
Well, just that you could play Ronald Jones, you could play James Robinson, you could play Justin Jackson, you could go down for Jalen Hurts, you could go down for like Cole Kmet or something at tight end.
No, you could have gone all the way down to Josh Johnson. That's who
I wasn't going to play Josh Johnson. There was no way I was going to play Josh Johnson with cash.
He's 4K with rushing upside.
Right. I ended up playing Stafford. It didn't work out all that well.
Stafford was another guy that you could have used.
Right. But Cooper Kupp, I mean, you were making builds that looked something like that. You were playing at either a cheap tight end, you were paying up for Gronkowski, who didn't do much either. You could have played Keenan Allen instead of Tyreek Hill in the second pay up wide receiver spot. I get it. But I mean, it was a very small select group.
There were maybe 15 players you could have picked from for cash.
Right. And on FanDuel, like Alexander Madison was 5,500.
Right. It's just a lot.
Right. Ronald Jones was 5,400. Justin Jackson was 50. I mean, like 3 running back builds, and then you just pay up 3 times at wide receiver, depending on who you paid up for and depending on what quarterback, what tight end. I thankfully played Kyle Pitts over Goddard and Gronkowski. And then whether or not you played the Falcons defense, the Bengals defense, something like that. Determining, I mean, that was the 2v2 to determine your slate.
Yeah, there were a lot of gimmies. I think that in cash games especially, it actually is kind of hard when there are that many good plays. Like I say it kind of frequently in NBA where I've been so annoyed with COVID and NBA, not because I think that it's like especially hard to project, because I think my models do very, very well when there's that much uncertainty. The problem is when you have legitimately 50 players to pick from that are like all good plays, like all 50 of those players are able to produce plus EV lineups and good results. I think that it makes it so that there's actually less skill involved in building lineups. Sure, you can like say that because you only have those 50 players to pick from, like anybody picking outside of those 50 players is making a mistake. But when you widen the pool that much, the variance within those 50 players, it's just like, okay, well, you built a good lineup because you used some players within that 50 player pool, but what one of those 50 players ends up being the one that breaks the slate and they're all 20+% owned, it ends up making it so I feel like variance takes over more on slates like that than on slates where there is little good plays and a lot of fringe plays. I felt that way about this NFL slate. There were so many good plays that it made it kind of difficult to say, okay, well, did you make a bad decision or did you just end up getting variance on the other side of things? I felt like that was this one. I felt like this NFL slate was a lot like that.
Well, I think in cash games, it was more of a prove it. Like if you play low stakes
I
stuff,
agree with that.
like, I mean, you shouldn't be, I mean, you shouldn't be playing guys like no matter if you people, I mean, I'm playing a head to head when someone's playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire in cash. And I'm like why,
Right.
why him? Right. Or like not playing Braxton Berrios, which was okay, but I'm like, I'm looking through some of these head to heads, no matter if I won or lost, and going, well, if I'm playing against too many people, that's like, let's either this lineup or that lineup. Yeah, then I understand. But I got on board the train in cash games. The reason why I played the Josh Palmer build is because I knew Josh Palmer was going to be 1,000,000% owned. That's very similar to last week with Gabe Davis. Of like, I don't want to get burned by the cheap wide receiver that could go off. I have no problem, the running back situation. I knew Justin Jackson and James Robinson would be the two highest. Then it would come to Ronald Jones and Alexander Madison. But it's like, I don't think I'm going to get Ronald Jones ended up like maybe 30-something% in cash. So it's like, most of the time you don't get burned by Ronald Jones. We all know his history. So it's like I'd rather not get burned by Gronkowski in the tight end position, right? With Godwin and Evans out. So I just looked at that and go, what is my easiest path to not making a mistake? Right? Gronkowski puts up 22 and Cole Kmet puts up 4. I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right? Josh Palmer puts up 18 and, Tyreek Hill puts up 4 or whatever. I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right? But that's a cash game type of mentality. But in GPPs, I mean, Antonio Brown and Cooper Kupp on this slate for wide receivers have the highest ownership I've seen this entire season. In the Millie. Yeah. So like in the Wildcat, Kupp is 58, Brown 52. But in the Millie, they're both 52. Play action 47 and 48. It's like to have half the lineups have one of these two receivers and have like 20% to 25% of the lineups have both in the same lineup. To me, I found that was the path to getting different by not either only playing Brown like with Brady, or at least in like a secondary correlation with someone like DJ Moore.
Sure.
And then like Cooper Kupp only with Stafford, or I played a bunch of Odell Beckham Jr.
Sure.
As leverage off of that. And then just instead of playing Kupp, you play Tyreek Hill, you play Justin Jefferson, you play another high-end wide receiver and hope that Cooper Kupp just has an average game, which, I mean, he had 24 points, which is,
that's
pretty good, right? It's still pretty good, but it didn't kill you.
Right.
And then at running back, like I was rotating in those 4 running backs and knocking in my running back, James, my running back choices. I got so many things right and still so many things wrong. Like too many. I got the hard parts right. I got the easy parts wrong.
So I got the pivots. I nailed them.
Right. That's it. I nailed all the pivots, but the main people that didn't. When I have Tyreek Hill in half my lineups, I'm like really? Right. You're the one that ruined it? When I have Gronk in my lineups sitting there at 3 points going, you're the one. I'm sitting there, I'm showing here, I'm pulling up my lineups. Like I have a T. Higgins one-off. I have Isaiah McKenzie.
Yeah.
I got, okay, let's go down here. Damian Harris, right? Damian Harris and Isaiah McKenzie across like an Allen Diggs McKenzie lineup with Damian Harris. Like, look at the ownership of that.
It's so hot, man. That's
right.
So
right. Then I go down over here. Rex Burkhead, right? You play Rex Burkhead across from a Charger, right? I got T. Higgins one off here. Right? I got OBJ. I got Madison, Ronald Jones, and I go to the next one. Oh, Joe Mixon. Oh, here's a Mahomes, Pringle, Hill lineup.
So
Kyle Pitts one off. Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, 31 points. I'm sitting there going, okay, I got that. I got Burkhead. I got Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp ring back over here. I mean, I got James Robinson in a couple of lineups that obviously, he got injured in 1 point. I played Braxton Berrios across from him in a couple of lineups like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, even Zay Jones got me 11 points. I didn't even realize that. Okay.
Pretty good.
Right.
So
looking through all these, it feels like it's like, oh, I take a look at this lineup. It's like, okay, I got Brady, I got Higgins, Brown, McKenzie, Justin Jackson. It's like, where's Brady, Gronk, Hill? It's like, dude. And I scored 190 and the winning score in the Millie was like 270 or something.
Yeah.
No, but I had like flaming lineups going into the late slate. And as long as Tyreek Hill could do something, that would 2 for 19 didn't really do it. But I mean, all these pivots. But it's not like I pivoted and it's just like, okay, I'm not going to play Jackson. I'm not going to play like those 4 running backs. It's not like it's like, no, I'm going to fade them all and then play 2 others. It's like, no, I just rotate them in.
Yeah.
Right. Justin Jackson, Damian Harris. Here's Madison, Burkhead, Jones, Mixon, Jackson, Jacobs, Okay, this one's a contrary one. Jacobs, Burkhead. But I have Palmer and Kupp in there. So that's probably the reason why I chose. And yeah, look. Kupp and Brown is in this lineup.
Yeah.
Right. So, and Palmer as a cheap, chalky punt. So it's like, okay, now I just got to get a Jacobs Burkhead there.
Yeah.
Right. Burkhead Jones. Right. So, I mean, were that similar to your pivots?
So first off with the cash game lineup, I just wanted to note, I would have played Justin Jackson, Ronald Jones, and James Robinson and not Alexander Madison had I played cash. But only because it would have gotten me Cooper Kupp, Antonio Brown, Keenan Allen, Rob Gronkowski, which were all super.
But it would have been worse than my lineup, even.
Right.
Because Keenan Allen did garbage also.
Right. So we'll talk about that with my GPP lineup. I only did 1 lineup this week. I had regged my regular 3 lineups into the power sweep. And as I was like looking at the slate and as I was building projections, because I build projections Sunday morning, I usually build them Saturday morning, but because we had a Saturday slate, and it was Christmas, and I was just exhausted. We've projected 90 slates of NFL over the last week and a half, and I was tired. So I projected Sunday morning instead. And as I'm building out projections and as I'm looking at them and I'm like trying to build my lineups, and I'm looking at lineups and I'm like, I don't think I can build 3 lineups here because they're all going to be the same lineup with a different quarterback. Like maybe I'm going to swap at running back a little bit. Maybe I'm going to have Cooper Kupp instead of Keenan Allen, but like, I'm not getting off Antonio Brown. I'm not getting off Joshua Palmer. I'm probably not getting off Gronkowski. Like there were a couple teams, the Chargers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Rams that I thought were like a step above the rest. And then I had the Bills as a contrarian stack. The Bills were actually my top stack, but I wanted to go after the teams that I thought had higher totals. The Bills only had like a 22 team total, whereas the Chargers and the Bucks had 27, 28. So I thought there were like 3 teams that made a lot of sense.
And just to highlight, the teams that I played were the Rams.
Yeah.
I played Stafford, Brady, Herbert, Allen, and Mahomes.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned the Chiefs. I played the Chiefs. Right. Yeah. So and I was thinking about Cousins and Ryan. The funny part is on the Advanced Sports Analytics show, I said the game that I had as a plus that could go over lower compared to ownership at the time on Thursday.
Yeah,
was Cincinnati, Baltimore.
Yeah,
but I was going under the assumption. I just want to point out, I was going under the assumption Lamar Jackson or Tyler Hunter.
Right.
Huntley was gonna be starting. So I was like, if Lamar is back, like, yeah, but I don't even mind Huntley. And then once that came down, and then ownership moved, and I saw Burrow was overowned. Then I'm like, Burrow's overowned, Chase is overowned, Higgins is fine. And then it's like, okay, well, I'll play more Mixon. I like Mixon.
Yeah,
I played, Higgins as a one-off, but like not a game. So I didn't like anyone on the Ravens side. So like that was the main reason. Like had Lamar Jackson or Huntley started, I probably would have had, and I probably would have done it from the Ravens side anyway. I would have done a Lamar, Andrews, Higgins type of lineup instead. But it's just kind of weird that I'm like, I'm targeting this game, but I'm not even sure that if that would have happened, if the ownership would have went that way anyway, I would have gotten off it. I mean, like right. Josh Allen was 3%. Don't like the Bill stack.
It was so silly.
And why is Brady like? How is Antonio Brown 50% and Gronkowski being 17% and Brady only being 6%?
I saw the ownerships at lock on here. Here's my lineup. I had Tom Brady, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski. I did not have a bring back from Carolina. I didn't think bringbacks were necessary on any of the top stacks.
Okay.
And then I had Keenan Allen and Joshua Palmer because that target tree is super skinny. I don't mind having both of them even without Herbert. This goes back.
Okay, you didn't play Jackson?
I did not play Jackson specifically, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but specifically because I had Keenan Allen and Joshua Palmer. I didn't want to have Justin Jackson at the same time because of the leverage that having Keenan Allen and Palmer would have had over the
on Justin Jackson.
So I did actually have a 2v2 late that I was deciding on between Keenan Allen and the Chiefs defense and Cooper Kupp and the Falcons defense. Now,
who'd you have at running back in that line?
So running back, I nailed the pivots. Just Joe Mixon and Damian Harris. Nailed the pivots. I mean, I could not have been better with the pivots at running back.
You should have played Burkhead.
I didn't mind Burkhead. And actually,
Burkhead goes along with your Chargers.
Right. So I had Tom Brady, Joe Mixon, Damian Harris, Keenan Allen, Antonio Brown, Joshua Palmer, Rob Gronkowski, Emmanuel Sanders, and the Chiefs defense.
You didn't go with McKenzie.
I did not because
McKenzie was going to play the slot. So yeah, that's the only reason that I play. I'm like there were all these guys out. Like, who's going to play the slot? It's not going to be Sanders. It's not going to be Diggs. So right. And the Patriots, the way that the Patriots play is that between the 20s, they let you do whatever the hell you want, especially in the middle of the field. So it's like give me whoever's the slot receiver on the Bills, and I like probably McKenzie, and it makes me not have to play Palmer or anyone down there. And it's like, okay. And then I can play Damian Harris in those lineups and play the little secondary correlation.
McKenzie was fine. I thought that I thought that Diggs was probably the most underowned wide receiver on the slate. He had the most leverage for me in my models. I projected him like God. I liked Sanders.
What did you have him projected? What was his number?
It's like 22 or something.
Oh, no, that's way off. Come on, 22?
It was high. Yeah. I told you.
I got him at 17.
Because the Bills are so pass heavy, not only between the 20s, but also in the red zone. So they have one of the highest adjusted pass rates. It's above 70% in both. So when you take away Gabriel Davis and when you take away Cole Beasley, it's like that.
Did you just give him like a 32% target share?
I think I gave him a 28-25. It was high, but like Diggs is still, he's one of the highest upside wide receivers.
If I had him at 22, I would have had him in like all my lineups.
Yeah, I thought that
he would have projected more. I had Tyreek Hill at 22.
Yeah, he projected really, really well for me, but I couldn't afford him. I did actually want to try to get to him, but I couldn't get to him. But regardless, like the way that I went about it with that Keenan Allen and Chiefs split, it was either Keenan Allen and the Chiefs or Cooper Kupp and the Falcons. But if I get off of Keenan Allen, I just leave Josh Palmer there, then there's no reason to fade Justin Jackson on the assumption that they're going to get there through the passing game rather than the running game. Little did I know that Justin Jackson would be used better than Austin Eckler has been used all year, be the leading wide receiver for the Chargers and the leading rusher, and have 2 red zone touchdowns. He just ran,
and the Chargers would lose to the Texans,
and they would lose. They were in the script that I played for God's sakes. But I nailed the pivots. I had Damian Harris as the best running back on the slate. He ended up crushing. I had Joe Mixon very, very well for a lot of the same thoughts that you did with that Bengals and Baltimore game. Whereas if Lamar Jackson is in, I don't like Joe Mixon as much, and I like the passing game for Cincinnati more. But because they had a third string quarterback and they are decimated, and Cincinnati are decent home favorites, and Joe Mixon is going to be way underowned, it's like, how am I not going to play Joe Mixon here? When they're in this script, he gets 25 rushing attempts and like all of the red zone work, and he's going to be underowned. So
right, it was about 7% owned.
Yeah, incredibly low owned. But that's what you're going to get when you have Alexander Mattison and Ronald Jones, James Robinson, and Justin Jackson. Like the way that people were going to play this slate was going to be likely either paying down at running back or playing Alexander Mattison. So the direct leverage that I got on Joe Mixon was incredible. And I liked Alexander Mattison as well. I didn't mind Alexander Mattison over somebody like Damian Harris or James Robinson. Like I liked the lineup that I built. And then when I see the ownerships and it's like, okay, yeah, Keenan Allen 21, Antonio Brown at 53, I thought was probably a little bit underowned. I think
that can't be under, not for a receiver. 50%.
I thought he was going to come in. No. I mean, underowned according to what I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be like 60, 65%.
Oh, no. I thought he would be like 40.
Oh, dude, 4,900 with nobody there. Tom Brady having the year that he's having. I thought he was going to be higher, but 52, I wasn't surprised by that. Joshua Palmer at 25%. Okay. And then I see Tom Brady at 6%. And I'm like, what did people do?
They played Brown as a one-off, obviously.
And then Joe Mixon at 7%, Damian Harris at 3%. And I was like, I love these ownerships. And I loved the ownerships all the way up until Tom Brady was terrible. And I was 2 points away from the cash line, and the Chiefs defense was doing well, and I needed like one more interception to get there, and I did. So, like I said, nailed the pivots, absolutely crushed the game theory, got the Sklansky bucks, did not get any actual real money from the slate.
I just didn't have them all together in the same lineup. I mean, that's really what it came down to.
Well, and this slate,
I mean, and also like I didn't have Joe Burrow, so like you're dead. Like you weren't winning,
right?
Well,
and there wasn't a stack that I would have played that would have done well. There just wasn't. Like the Chargers ended up not doing very well with Herbert. I think he put up like 15 or something like that, 16.
No, Herbert put up 21.
Oh, okay. He had an okay slate.
Yeah, but no one that you paired him with other than Jackson. I mean, Palmer got me 15 points is whatever the hell, but I mean,
right. But like I would have paired him with Keenan Allen and Joshua Palmer. Tom Brady stack, like pairing it Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski. Like that was the stack that I'm going to make. Right. The Rams, I would have gone Cooper Kupp and OBJ and these teams, you focus on the teams that have the high team totals. And like Tampa Bay put up 32. I can't be mad because they exceeded their team total. The Rams put up plenty of points. The Chargers put up plenty of points.
The Chiefs put up plenty of points.
Chiefs put up plenty of points. You just can't do anything better.
We should have gotten the memo that all you had to do is play all of the Bengals and Mark Andrews.
Right.
Together.
Yeah.
Dude, this guy threw for over 500 yards. He had 300. that I've never seen 3 receivers from the same team have to get the 100-yard bonus.
Yeah.
And no, it's you play Burrow. You pair him with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, and you play Mixon.
Yeah.
And then you play Andrews also. So you're playing a 5+1.
Incredible. Yeah, you basically treat it like a showdown slate.
Right.
And there you go. That's all you need to do. But it wasn't going to happen for me this week. I didn't have Cincinnati projected super well or rated well as a stack because, and the main reason for this, it's not that I was just like, oh yeah, the Bengals, like, I think they suck. The Bengals over the last 5 weeks have been middling in terms of pass rate on the adjusted script. They've been 57% pass overall, which is pretty low in the league, 61% in the adjusted script. And then in the red zone, Cincinnati has only had a 42% pass rate in the red zone over the last 6 weeks. And when that's happening, like, they're not going to project for a lot of passing touchdowns because
the Bengals were up by 20 points. They're still chucking the ball.
I know. And then, like, apparently it comes out, they're like, oh, well, we knew that Burrow was closing in on 400, 500 yards, so we just kept letting him throw. And it's like, why don't you do that every week then?
Right. That's what they should be doing.
If you think that he has this capacity to throw for 500 yards and you're like, oh, well, he's already at 350. Maybe he gets another 150 in a quarter. Just do that every week.
The Bengals have possibly the best receiving core in the league. I think the Bucks probably when they're healthy.
Yeah.
Godwin, Evans, Gronk, and all those guys. But, like, dude, Tyler Boyd is your wide receiver 3. He'd be the wide receiver 1 on probably 5 or 6 teams in the league. I mean, if he was on the Jets, he'd be the alpha. He was on the Lions, they'd be loving him, right?
Jaguars.
Yeah, the Jaguars, right?
It's insane. So yeah, when things like that happen, I think that not only does it, like, I mean, Justin over at Run the Sims, he posted his range. Oh
yeah, I saw that. His like a 99.8th percentile outcome or something.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this might have been an outlier, and like, it's one of those things where we talk about it all the time. Of there's only 17 slates in NFL. So, like, this is basically that 4 home run game from Scooter Gannett back in 2018, where you're just like, he hasn't hit a home run all year. Then he has a 4 home run game, and you're like, what are you going to do? And it also, I think it highlights what we talk a lot in this industry about how dumb coaches are. And it's like, dude, if you as a coach believe that your quarterback can throw for 150 yards in a quarter in any given game, then how on God's green earth are you ever not letting him do that?
Yeah, why are you running the ball on 2nd and 8?
Like, what is your justification for, oh yeah, well, we're just gonna, slow this game down? Like, no, dude, if you think that your quarterback can ever in a game throw for 500 yards, you just try to do that every game. And I don't understand why you would ever do anything else. Just don't get it.
And the thing about the Bengals is that, like, compared to on Thursday, their ownership was twice as much as I had projected.
Right.
On Thursday, I mean, like, when Burrow was going off, and I'm like, okay, is that a big deal? I'm like, 12%.
Yeah, twice the ownership of Brady.
Like, why is he 12% owned? And like Jamar Chase is 13. Like, I had Chase for like 5. I had Higgins for like 7. Mm-hmm. I had Burrow for 5. I got Andrews for 5 to 8 or something. And that's the main reason why it's like, well, if Lamar is in, like, I'll play the Bengals at that ownership. Mm-hmm. And then come Sunday morning, I aggregate a bunch of stuff, and it's like it's almost more people are playing Burrow. And it didn't get up to 12. It got up to like 8, right? Like 8, and Chase would be 9, and Higgins would be 10. Andrews would be 10. And I'm like it's overowned. Based on my stuff, it was overowned. So I'm like,
I didn't
want to play it.
I can't blame you. I thought that it was ETR that ended up talking about Cincinnati a little bit more, and like, they just started to catch steam, and people like, oh, well, why is Burrow so cheap? And it's like that, I saw 2 articles on the Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers, and people saying, oh, well, is it a mistake to lock in the Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers? And I'm seeing all this steam, and I'm like looking at my stuff And it's like, dude, when I look at the Vegas baselines that I have built up, Cincinnati was only projected for 1.14 passing touchdowns and 1.57 rushing touchdowns. And I'm like, if people are going to play Cincinnati, this is probably a great slate for me. Little did I know the 500-yard game for Burrow was coming.
No, well, the thing that I mentioned on Thursday was that they projected, compared to other players on the slate, other stacks on the slate, other team totals on the slate, they projected less from a median perspective.
Right. Yeah.
But these are two teams that have explosive players. So, like, if I'm going to play, so I think someone asked me about like Jags Jets, right? That game. It's like, do you want to target Jags Jet? Why don't you want to target Jags Jets as underowned versus, get leverage off of Robinson? Why don't you play Marvin Jones or Treadwell or any? I'm like, I look at these two teams, I look at the two quarterbacks, I go, where are the explosive players? Where Braxton Berrios, 12 for 167 and 2 touchdowns. Do you see that? No. I take a look at the Bengals wide receivers. I take a look at Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, right? I go, all I need is a broken play. All I need is a couple of big plays, and this game could go way over because it contains those type of plays. The 49ers, right? People think of them as a very run-heavy team, but it's like with Debo and Ayuk and Kittle, like, they decide to pass it a little bit, go a little bit more passing oriented. The 49ers could put up 42 points today. I mean, but if they decide to shift more towards the running game, look at the Seahawks, right? Why do you think we play DK Metcalf, even though Pete Carroll's a schmuck? Right? Metcalf and Lockett. It's like, why aren't they throwing the ball 45 times a game? We got a receiving core like this.
My models liked the Bears over the Seahawks yesterday.
That's the state of affairs with the Seahawks. That Darnell Mooney projects better than DK Metcalf because Pete Carroll doesn't want to do anything. Obviously, that game was a little bit different because it was a snow game and the weather mattered. I mean, it still went over, right? They scored 49 points total.
Yeah, and the Bears get there like on the last play of the game, but it was so funny. I'll try to find like underdogs, and like I had Arizona or Buffalo, I had over New England, but that's 1 point. But then I'm going through and it's like, okay, yeah, the Chargers deserve to be 11-point favorites. Tampa Bay probably deserves to be 10-point favorites, and then it's Chicago over Seattle. Like, why is that happening? But Seattle, man, Pete Carroll is just terrible, man. He's so bad.
Greg Rosenberry says that everyone's model in the industry is wrong in the chat. Because the Ravens defense, you have to, obviously, against their secondary, like in your model, obviously, when you compare matchups versus secondary, you have to boost everyone by 700%, right?
Oh, yeah, because all the defensive players are missing and they're using backups, right? And
right, because you would figure that if that mattered enough, Cincinnati's team total would be 38 and not 24.
Right.
And also their run rate wouldn't be 64%. It would be much lower than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's the thing with modeling, and I'll speak to this as the resident modeler of this podcast. Vegas is pretty smart. That's my answer.
Betting markets are. I don't like using the term like something that says, the bookmakers, like, no, it's the betting markets.
Right. It is the betting markets.
The closing lines of NFL games are the most efficient numbers.
It's not even close.
In all of anything related to DFS or sports betting or anything like this, the closing lines of NFL, the R squared of that is the highest of any. You can't get, there's nothing that correlates better.
And the reason for that is because of volume, because there are so many people betting that you get much, much better volume and get much more fine granular detail on the models for NFL. It actually goes, NFL is the top. It's the most secure. And then you go down to NBA. NBA's next. And then big drop off, huge drop off down to NHL. and then baseball, and then soccer. And there's a reason why whenever we look at spreads, like betting the spread in NHL or MLB, I think is one of the most profitable things that you can do, because it is always 1.5. I've seen like 2.5 like 3 times or something, because the models not only are the models less efficient because there is significantly less volume of people betting on them to refine them, but also because of the variability of event-oriented sports make it so that things like that, and embracing the volatility, like it makes it so that those models and those lines on games that are not being bet on enough, there's so much edge on those. And I mean, they're juiced usually more. You'll usually see like a 20-cent vig on it. But attacking those, like people think that the NFL is something where it's like, oh, these lines are going to be like significantly off sometimes, like very, very rarely. And that's why, like, when I see things like the Bears being favored in my model, I'm like, that's really, really silly, because I would think that they would not be favored in any situation. But yeah, you're right. It's based on volume, and it's based on being refined. And especially the last thing I'll say about it is this late in the season. So in the first 4 weeks of the season, the books are much less confident in their own models. So the books will put together models, and they'll have like their biases and their priors, but they're much less confident in them. So you'll see line changes a lot more earlier in the season. You'll see lines shift like 4 or 5 points significantly more often earlier in the season. Whereas now the books are very confident in their models. So even big bets.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. That's not how it works.
That the owner of the sportsbook at MGM talked about this last year on their podcast, that is how it works.
No, that's not. No, you're being very deceiving.
Am I? I'm just relaying what I've heard on.
Okay, let me. You want me to explain?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
The sports book comes out with an opening line based on their whatever way that they originated.
Right.
Okay. Their opening line, obviously, with the less amount of sample, is going to be more likely to be off. I mean, I'm agreeing 100% with what you say. Yeah. How does the line move from opening to close?
Based on volume.
Based on, well, what do books do? Now, I want to highlight that most, if not all, retail sports books do not originate their own lines.
Sure.
Okay, so offshore books that are known to taking more sharp action, they'll open. So Sunday night, lines will come out on an offshore book.
Yeah.
At low limits, which means you may not be able to get, maybe the max is 1,000, maybe. Sometimes it's maybe even 500. So once those, we see a football game open up, but the total is 47. And maybe once that line opens, sharp bettors look at their models, right? They have their models and everything like that. And they go, this game really should be a 50.
Yeah.
Like that, the 47 is a bad line. Now, the book, their model, their primitive version of modeling, right? The originator put 47. Now they're starting to take $500 bets, $1,000 bets on the over. Within the next 3 hours, it goes based on the profiling of the customers, right? Who beats the closing line more often than not? They start seeing that all their sharp action is coming in over. So now the line's moving to 47.5.
Right.
2 hours later, 2 hours after that, it's 48. Yep. 2 hours after that, it's 40. First off, that line you're not going to be able to get on a retail sports book because it hasn't been posted on a retail sports book yet.
Right.
Okay. By the time 6 hours go by or so, then maybe that 48.5 gets posted on insert BetMGM, insert DraftKings, insert whatever. Now, maybe the closing line will end up being 50 because that's what the best modelers or whatever, the most amount of action, wisdom of crowds will end up making it. So now once it gets once the action starts coming in early on the limited action, the next day, like Monday morning, that offshore sports book will now like up the limits on the spreads or the totals to 2,000 or 5,000.
Sure.
Right. And then they're still getting a lot of action on the over. So now it's going to 49. It goes to 49 and a half. And then all the retail sports books look at that and they go, I don't know what action we're getting, but let's start moving the number here. So it gets moved to 49 and a half. And now by Monday afternoon, now it's kind of stable, right? Now it's kind of like, now it could be 50, it could be, and then throughout the course of the week, like the limits start getting raised. So like by the time Sunday before game comes around, you want to make $100,000 bet, like go ahead. Like the sports books will take it. I mean, I'm assuming they haven't profiled you or anything, but like that, the books will originate a line when they have some form of origination. But the reason why the line gets shaped is because of limits, is right. Because it's like if the line was that off, like this is why when I tell people that sports betting is not complicated. To beat sports betting is not difficult. It's actually extremely easy to beat sportsbook, to beat the better way to put it, to beat the betting lines. Okay, 99% of your work is not going to be that.
Right.
99% of your work is getting the money down. Right? Because you could look at an offline all you want and go Sunday night. You know, I used to do it for baseball way back in the day. They put the overnight lines, right? And sometimes they'd have the lines out even while the game the day before is going on, right? And you look at it. You have a model, right? You're looking through and you go, dude, the wind's going to be blowing in at like 12 miles an hour tomorrow. And they have this game as an 8.5 with these two pitchers. Like this game should be like a 7.5 or whatever. Like I'm putting money down. And you know what? You go to put money down, right? And you say, I want to put $500 down. They go, nope, $150 is the limit. And you go, well, this is an easy bet. I want the under 8.5 on the total. $150, that's your limit. It's like, okay, now I got to go to another book now.
Yeah.
Right. That posted the copied line 8.5. And I go, I want the bet. And they go, 220 is your limit. Okay. Let me go to the third book.
No.
Right. Like, okay, well, how much can I, and then by the time I go to the third book, it's been an hour and now the line's at 8.
Yeah.
Right. So then I go to that book. Okay. And they go, your limit's 500. Right. It's like, but I want to bet more. And then I go back to the book that I started with, and now it's down to 8. So I'm like, let me see if I think this should be 7.5. And they go, oh, your limit's 500. Right. So, and then the morning comes, you've gotten about maybe 1,200 down, and now the line's 7.5.
Yeah. And
now it's like, oh, do you want to bet on 7.5? Your limit's 5,000.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's easy to beat the books. For how much? And then the edge on the 8.5 bet is maybe 8%, right? Or something like maybe it's 10%. And then I got to sum at 8. And so you could push a couple. So maybe your total edge on your $1,200 is 6 or 7% of $1,200.
Yeah.
Which is what, $70 or whatever like that.
Like that, yeah.
And then on top of that, you have to, if you're going to do that at multiple places and multiple games, when you find them, this is especially back in the day. It's probably much easier now. Balancing out your money is a problem because you'll win some bets and lose some bets. And then next thing you know, you have 20 accounts. And then the best line is on a book that you have $130 on. Yeah. And by the time they approve your deposit, this is like 2005. So they typically approve deposits. So you have to wait for someone to manually approve it. So I'm waiting an hour for my manual approval and the line moves.
Yep.
And it's like I couldn't get it there because I didn't have, and then I win a bet. Then now next thing you know, I have 5,000 on one account and I only have $100 on another account. So you have to, and then you can't withdraw and then deposit in there because for money laundering rules. And then also for the fact that you have to kind of keep your play, kind of hidden, right? You shouldn't be middling on the same book. Like it's like that's a number one flag. It's like if you're gonna try to middle the same book, like they're gonna shut you down. I mean, like
eventually action so fast,
right? Like where you bet early in the week. If you're gonna bet, like in that example, if that we said with the 47 total that you got early in the week for X amount of money, whatever, it's probably not much. So you get 47, and by the time it closes, towards close, it's 50. So you want to bet, if you bet the over 40 and you bet the under 50, obviously on 48 and 49, you win both bets. On 47, you win one and push the other. At 50, you win one, push the other. So it's like, if you're going to get the 50 and it's the 50 exists across all books, don't bet it at the place where don't bet the under 50 at the place where you bet the over 47, right? Because they're going to look and you go, what the hell are you doing? You're betting both sides of the game. Same thing with the money lines, right? On money lines, because you can find arbitrage all over the place, as long as you know when to time everything. So you could bet, like in an MMA fight or something like that. The line sucks. They overrated the favorite or something like that, and you bet plus 180 on the underdog, and then by the time that it comes around, next thing you know that you're betting minus 115 on the favorite, and you're capturing 65 cents in between. And you could even make a little formula so you could even it out, and you could you could essentially guarantee yourself profit.
Yeah.
You do that at the same book, they're gonna to them, it's like you're just stealing money from them.
And because you are.
Well, you're not real. I mean, you're making two valid bets at two different times, but they don't want those types of. They don't want those.
Of course not.
So your goal is to bet it in one place and then bet it in another place. And then you see what your hold percentage is. It's positive. And there you go. So you could find plenty of situations where your hold is essentially zero. When you're betting, you could bet minus 115 and plus 115 on two sides of the game. I know this is supposed to be a DFS review show, but I at least want to explain some sports.
This was really, really valuable for a lot of people, especially because over the next year, where more and more states are going to legalize sports betting, like mobile sports betting, this kind of information is really important.
Right. But this is the main reason why, like, I don't do any sports betting content.
It's very time.
This would be the explaining how this all works. But as far as dude, it's not that complicated. I mean, we have Grant here, we have Will here. Mm-hmm. Britt is good with the props and everything. It's not that hard. I mean, I could look at the projections on any sport and then overlay them with the sportsbooks odds and then calculate my edge and bet accordingly. The problem is getting on props. I mean, just getting the money down is extremely hard, and without getting limited. And if you want to make beer money, it's 100% doable. It is. If you want to supplement yourself with maybe a couple of $100 a month, right? You want to make $400 a month.
Yep.
On average with sports betting, absolutely. That is no issue whatsoever. Obviously, you need a bankroll. You probably need a $5,000 bankroll or something like that to start out with. That's no problem. But can you make a living off of $300 or $400? No, you're not going to be able to. Right. So either you step up your game to have 20 plus accounts. Multiple. You have to have partners. It gets so complicated, right? Back in 2005, I did it with baseball, made some money, not a lot of money. Now, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot of money. It's still good money, but it's just that beating the lines isn't the hard part. That was the easy part. When waiting for the morning, I did it in baseball. You beat the morning, you beat the overnight lines. You find arbitrage opportunities in the morning and the afternoon. You know what books copy what other books. You know how they move. There are some books that have dime lines, some books that have 20-cent lines. There are some books that don't move their lines for 4 hours. So someone is injured, and it happens much quicker now, but it used to be back in 2005 that, so-and-so the star first baseman of whatever team, getting on sports talk radio, the manager says he's getting a day off, right? Now, this is before Twitter and everything. So it's like, that he's getting a day off and the line has not moved yet. Right. And then you bang it out. You get 500 bucks or so down, $1,000 down. And then you'll wait until nearly close. And you bet the other side because the line's going to move so much dramatically. Obviously, in baseball, we're not talking about starting pitchers because obviously, if the starting pitcher gets scratched, your bet's going to be voided anyway because it's required. I mean, I hope people know that like if you're making the bet on a baseball game with the intended starting pitcher, right? So if like Garrett Cole gets scratched, it's going to be a bullpen game. Like your bet's going to just be voided. But that's the whole goal. Like, and then you'd wait to the other side. I had my little Excel spreadsheet that would tell me if I have one side of this bet, how much, and what are the odds on the other side? What do I bet, and how much do I make right in the middle, right? And then you just and it's rinse and repeat. And you could do 500 on one side, you end up with like 420 on the other side, and you guarantee yourself $35.
Yep.
Like just bing right there. And it doesn't matter which side wins or loses. You're guaranteed $35. The problem is that one account will have $1,000+ and the other account will have zero in it. So you need to have enough money across so many accounts. To me, that's sport. That is the art of sports betting. It's not the what side of the line do you want? Like dude, just it's like what we say about DFS. It's like, just look at the projection.
Yep. And I have in my prop betting tool, I have it built in to read from Draftkings Sportsbook. So like, it's so easy to just like, I ran models in the morning. Maybe there's going to be this person out. Okay, well, the line already likes this person, so I might as well just take the over on that. And then lo and behold, that person is out later. It's like, okay, cool. Well, now that person is going to be their PRA it was 30 in the morning. Like the Drew Holiday situation, it was something that Grant just like absolutely took advantage of over the last like 2 weeks with no Giannis. It's like, okay, well, if Giannis is questionable and Drew has a PRA, points, rebounds, assists prop out of like 30 or something in the morning, right? And Giannis is questionable. And my model says that he has a PRA of like 34 or something. So there's a little bit of edge on that, right?
Right.
And
there's a little bit of edge at -110.
Right, at -110.
If it's minus 135, you got nothing.
Right. That's why I say a little bit of edge. Assuming a -110 or a -115 or something like that, you have a little bit of edge. And then later, you place your bet, put down $100 on that. And then later, Giannis gets ruled out. And now the PRA is like 46. And you're like, oh, well, take the under on that now. So now you have between 30 and 46 where you're going to make money. Like, most likely, unless he scores, really, really badly, or really, really well.
No, you're guaranteed to win at least one of your bets.
And you didn't even things out correctly to where you make money on either outcome, because you do still have to measure it out. But that's the kind of thing where if you can make a process of that, because my goal starting in January is I'm going to be trying to make anywhere between $500 and $1,000 per month on sports betting. That's going to be something that I challenge myself to. I have never tried to do it before, so I like taking on challenges. I'm going to try to do that. And I think that that's feasible with the way that I can build out models. And I agree with you that as long as you're paying attention to the closing line values, and as long as you're paying attention to where you're placing your bets, it's not super hard to make a little bit of money sports betting.
No, it's really not. As that little bit of money, but you're
it's
not you're going to quit your job and spend 8 to 10 hours a day type of thing in order to, like, you could do that, but it takes all the other getting the money down skills.
And you have to dedicate to it. Another person who I think is very, very good at it and pays a lot of attention is Greg Ehrenberg on Twitter. He works, I think, at Osimo. He's really good at the season long kind of stuff with that, where he's very disciplined and very good at understanding where
you're talking about futures betting.
Yeah, futures betting. Yeah. where he's very, very good at understanding and paying attention to the way that the league and the fans react to certain things. And I respect him a lot for that. That's a longer term game that I think that I would be worse at. But that kind of thing too, I think that can pay really good dividends in terms of an investment standpoint. I think it is harder than betting props, obviously, but it's a very interesting thing to pay attention to with like coach of the year and MVP and futures bets. I think that is a good investment strategy as well, if you can pay attention to it and if you can be on top of things very, very well.
Sean George asks, do you think legalized sports betting makes it easier to get the volume down without getting limited? No, harder.
No, way harder.
Retail sportsbook are not in the bookmaking business.
Yeah, they don't care about
they're in the market. They're in the marketing business.
Yeah. So like something. Let me ask you this, Jordan. Something that Levitan said before. Well, I guess it was earlier in the season, because him and the guys over at ETR have been really trying to attack the props, and they've been doing a pretty good job. But he said that he wants to place some stupid bets every once in a while to keep the books honest with him. Do you think that works?
No.
It
not really. No.
Okay.
Well, what's a stupid?
I don't have
number one. If you're going to make stupid bets, the edge on sports betting is low as it is. So anything that reduces, like, oh, I'm going to just put down a $5 8-team parlay. Like, dude, that's not going to mean much.
Sure.
Right? Like, it really comes down, like, in 2005, it was much harder to profile someone because the tools that the books had were very primitive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So as long as you didn't middle the same book, as long as you weren't arbing them, essentially you could get away with anything. They weren't calculating your CLV. They weren't like they were none of them were doing that. As long as it didn't feel like you were manipulating the lines, because there were some syndicates that would bet 10 grand on one site in order to bet 50 grand on another when the line got copied.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And you bet one way and the line gets copied, and then you bet the 5 times the amount on the other side because that's the correct way, because they'd adjust too much because the early limits were just pushing it in one direction when really it should be in the other direction. Those types of things are, I mean, it's 2021. The tools that the books have now to profile are absurdly good.
Oh yeah.
So the thing is that it's because the model is broken. I'm talking about the sports betting as a business model is broken.
Right.
There are some sports books that are in bookmaking operations, right? That the process that I described is what they do. They originate a line. They allow the market in the beginning with limits to shape the line, and then by close they're efficient. And then they open up more, and as they open up the limits, you get more of the dumb money or whatever. And then they're just getting action. They don't care. Doesn't matter. There's no need to profile anyone. There's no reason why on a 1 o'clock football game that if you make a bet at 12:58, you should ever be limited. Unless the book has its own max of like, you can't bet more. We don't want to get hit by more than $500,000 by anyone. Right. But there's no reason that no matter how sharp you're profiled, that if there's a 7-point spread in a game and it's 2 minutes before the game, that you shouldn't be allowed to bet $5 grand on it. I mean, like, it's what is my bet different from this other person's? It doesn't. The line is efficient at this point. There's nothing to be scared of or anything like that. But retail sports books, that's what they're in the business for. They're in the business for we want to attract the dumbest people possible for the least amount of work.
Yeah.
Right. Real sports books are like in the United States, Circa would be one that would be they're a sports book. Everyone else in the United States, all the other books, BetMGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, PointsBet, Barstool, whatever, all those other books. Number one, most of them are like, DraftKings just changed, but a lot of them can be. So like, all you're playing is like a skin in a poker, in like old poker skins in online poker. You're playing with the same platform. It's just it just looks different.
Yeah.
Right. You go to one, like it's the same lines. It's the same backend system that's doing everything. The only difference is maybe the promos are different, right? Because it's all you're paying for is a different shade of paint and marketing, right? Promos. Other than that, it's all the same. Now DraftKings has gone to their own technology, so they have a slightly different system. They have their own internal system now since they bought SB Tech, or they merged with SB Tech. So you get different lines there, but still at the end of the day, most sportsbook companies want to automate, so because they're allowed. Look at all the markets that you could bet on. There's a million markets, and you know that how many seconds will the rodeo guy fall off his horse? I mean, like they have that type of thing. So how much of a staff do they have to monitor all of that? They don't. They want to automate it as much as possible. But the problem with automating all of it is that you get domain experts that are much sharper than the books, right? And if they don't want them to be taken advantage of. So it's like, well, what we could do is either make our system better and give you better lines, or we could just kick out the ones that are too smart for us and just hope that the dumb people bet with us, right? So there's a way to do it. You could do the line shaping mentality. It just involves actually putting thought into your product. If you don't want to put thought into your product and you just want to run commercials all day, and people will bet. I mean, James, you know how frustrating it is to see where 95% of people that bet on sports that will bet on a spread, that they'll bet on a spread at minus 115. And I'm like, why aren't you betting minus 110 on that? It's like, well, because I bet here. It's like, what does it matter? Or just like what we said before, when you said that the line, when you said was 30 on holiday, right? Yeah. 30, it's 30 currently, and you have it at 34 in your model. And I go at minus 110, there's a small edge there. But at minus 135, there isn't.
Right.
Minus 135 is probably equal to about 34.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have to lay 135 to get your 100. If it was plus 100, yeah, you'd be great. Yep. Sure. Right. Minus 105 or something like that. But people just look at the prop, right? Oh, I can't believe this prop is at 36 yards for some receiver or something like that. Like I have him at 50 yards. And I go, yeah, the prop is minus 180. Right. I mean, like you're not, that's not, but I have 14 yards over. Yeah, but you're almost laying 2-1. Right. Like if you calculate that in comparison to your model, that's like betting on him scoring 50 yards, that's exactly what you have in your model.
I can give an actual example of that. Hold on. What was the game? Terry McCool. And then, like, obviously, I know that we're like running out of time here, but this is a good example. So Terry McLaurin, let's say I had it for 82 yards last night. If you put in that 82 yards, so say the prop is at like 60, right?
Right.
And then it is at negative 125. That negative 125 makes it so that you do want to bet the over because that by far. But where's the line where you don't? I'm assuming it's something right. like if you have him at 82 and the prop is 60, probably you don't mind betting that up until like maybe minus 220 or something. Right. So here's another example. If the prop is at 75, right? Prop's at 75 receiving yards. I have an 82. At negative 125, we have a 3.96% edge on the over.
Okay.
If it goes up to negative 135, it's only 2%.
Right. And once it gets up to minus 160, you're dead.
Negative 160, you have a 2% edge on the book. So like that, like meaning that it's a bad bet, meaning that you have lost 2% on that.
Right.
If you take that over at 160.
That's minus 2% EV.
Right. So that's something that not near enough people pay attention to.
No, they just go, no, I think he's going to go over. Let me bet on it. Even if I have to lay 3-2, right? Even if it's minus 150 and just like, oh, I bet 3 to win 2, but I think it's going to go over.
Right. Because if you look at a receiving projection of 82 on Terry McLaurin, understand that that is the median, the 50th percentile of what you think that he is going to do. So if a book gives you a line of 82 and the vig is 100,
right,
then that means that you're at the 50th percentile of what the book thinks that he is going to do. So if the book gives you a prop of 75 at negative 160, that 75.
Their median's like 84. Their median is 84, right?
Their median is 84. There's that at 75, that is that they're giving him a 61% chance to hit 75. Right. So think about it that way. You're not thinking that the only way that you are seeing a line that is a median next to your projection, which is a median on a book, is if it's at plus 100. Otherwise, it's leaning one way or another. So you need to think about that.
And that's why to close it out, when we talk about DF, like thinking in terms of DFS, if you want to use sportsbook lines in your DFS process, for statistical purposes, you take out the VIG. So it'd be VIG free. Right. So like, oh, the prop is at 75 at minus 110. It's like, well, that really means 76.5, right? That 77 maybe, like, right? Because the 10% is the VIG. So you want to know what the sportsbook medians are versus what with the VIG it counts as. And obviously you have to, in order to know what that VIG is, you'll have to know both sides, both the over and the under.
Yep.
What the spread, what the spread is. And that's the hold. That's called the hold percentage. Yep. But James, see, this is the interesting part. I enjoy this type of sports betting type of talk, but the thing is, it's all educational. It's not like, well, who do we bet on tonight? It's like, I don't know. Look at it's the same thing as what I say in DFS. Look at the projections and look at the sports books and anything with positive EV, go make a bet.
Go for it. Do whatever you want.
Go for it. Right. I don't know what that's going to be now. I don't know what books is going to be now. There you go. But that's the essence of sports bet.
Yep.
In the same way that in DFS, right? But in the same way in DFS, your goal is to do the same thing in a lineup perspective versus ownership, projection versus ownership.
Yep.
Right. So James, you have stuff on Pay Dirt for like what you mentioned as far as calculating that stuff, or is that still internal to you?
Oh no, I have these. I have an NFL prop betting tool and an NBA prop betting tool that you can physically do what I just did. Like,
okay,
over on the site,
paydirtdfs.com.
Yep, paydirtdfs.com. I'll actually make it free for the day for anybody who wants to go take a look and try them out. You can put in the same thing that I just did, put in the prop, like the over on it, put in what the over line for the book is, and you can see what the actual probabilities in EV is. So I have that kind of stuff. I'll have more sports betting tools moving forward as well, because I'm going to be trying to do more of that stuff next year over at paydirtdfs.com.
You can follow James Paydirt_DFS, me at Blender HD, both of us co-authors of the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. You know those, if you listen to the sports betting conversation, you're like, wow, I never thought of sports betting this way. I never like, oh, that's how sports betting works. That's how the books work. This is what betting is. It's not like who's a good play. Just like, no, you have a model and then you just bet on stuff or you predict line moves. There's the Steam version of that. That's a whole separate subject, but that's more about knowing how the books work than knowing about the teams. Because you could be a successful sports bettor without knowing anything about sports and without even having a model, because all you're doing is profiling how books move their numbers. But if you want to learn like that type of interesting stuff, the strategy, the game theory of stuff, and when it comes to daily fantasy sports, theoryofdfs.com. How to think like a professional DFS player. It's all these same type of concepts apply in DFS. So it's 15 hours long. Me and James talk you through it all. Applies to any sport. So go to theoryofdfs.com, pick it up before the end of the year. We got NBA Grinders Live coming up later today. I know Jason Tatum's out, right? We got who knows who's going to play.
We got an NBA slate.
Do you think, James? Do you think by the time the NFL season's over, I could play NBA DFS and it won't be like this?
No, dude, just play League of Legends. I'm telling you, man, just get a sub over at my site. Just play League. It's so much better than dealing with this. It comes back
maybe that is what I'll do.
January 9th, dude. So much edge.
But hey, if you're playing NBA tonight, we got Grinders Live crunch time for premium members, and I'll be back. Remember, no show tomorrow, no show Wednesday because I'm not playing NBA during this crap show. So I'll be back Thursday we'll look at week 17 in NFL and answer your DFS strategy questions as I always do on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.